and it is destructive to the very soul of our city. In a search for answers, many have asked why. And there are seemingly infinite numbers of why. Enough to make each specific act of violence appear to be driven by a randomness that is both maddening and unsolvable. Different lives, different minds, different places, different times. But there is at least one variable that is common to most homicides: a gun. More specifically, a gun that is illegally possessed. So today, along with our partners in federal law enforcement, we state our objective clearly so that there is no confusion. And it is this: we seek to make Indianapolis the last place on earth you want to be caught illegally possessing a gun. And here's why. Over the last 2 years, we've begun the process of investing in group violence intervention. At its core, this initiative identifies those most likely to commit or be the victim of gun violence, and it offers them a peaceful path out. A path that diagnoses their needs and offers relevant services: housing, jobs, therapy, education, help. However, in study after study, one truth about this initiative is clear: those who do not choose the path out, those who instead choose to perpetrate violence in our neighborhoods and our community, these people must be held accountable for their actions. Less than 1 year ago, Chief Brian Roach and I came together to launch our city's Crime Gun Intelligence Center. It is an entity dedicated to eradicating firearms which are illegally possessed from the streets of Indianapolis. And thanks to the Crime Gun Intelligence Center, they have gathered in just 1 year. We have removed hundreds of crime guns and hundreds of repeat shooters from the streets of our city. So today, we expand our efforts at making guns illegally possessed and those who carry them public enemy number one in Indianapolis. Over the coming weeks, IMPD will increase the assets and the resources dedicated to CGIC, which is the acronym for Crime Gun Intelligence Center, including a 25% increase in personnel assigned to do the work that CGIC is involved with. Working with our federal partners in the Office of the United States Attorney and the ATF, we will increase CGIC's capacity to investigate and prosecute federal gun cases in Indianapolis. This will mean more detectives going out and gathering information to identify those individuals most responsible for violence in our community. A 25% increase will mean more effective cooperation between agencies to identify the sources of crime guns used in Indianapolis. Now, to be sure, the city is focused on more than reacting to violent crime, with policies addressing everything from food insecurity to more affordable educational opportunity. We are taking a holistic approach to reducing violence in the city of Indianapolis. We cannot arrest our way out of this problem. But Today, our message is simple and it is intentional. If you are in possession of an illegal gun in Indianapolis, we will find you, we will arrest you, we will prosecute you, and we will send you to federal prison for quite a long time. We are coming because we know who you are. Let me introduce United States Attorney Josh Minkler for more on this partnership. Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chief, for your commitment of resources to the Crime Gun Intelligence Center. As many of you know, this was a concept in 2017. It turned into a grant proposal to the Department of Justice in 2018, and then became a reality as the mayor announced in 2019. The need for the Crime Gun Intelligence Center to respond to the challenges that this community face are clear and unequivocal. In 2018, in the state of Indiana, there were 8,500 crime guns recovered for the entire state of Indiana. 4,000 of those crime guns were recovered in Marion County, in Indianapolis. To put that in perspective, for New York City, which is a large city, it's the biggest city in the country, in 2018, they recovered 3,710 crime guns. There were more crime guns recovered in Indianapolis than in New York City. And so the city, the IMPD, federal partners, ATF, the Marion County prosecutors, and our office worked together to start the Gun Crime Intelligence Center last year. This has been augmented by the mayor and the chief today, for which I thank them. I would also recognize the Fishers chief of police and the Fishers mayor, who have provided resources to the Crime Gun Intelligence Center to respond to a challenge of expanding violent crime and gun violence impacting Hamilton County. So this is my 26th year of doing this, and I think I can say with some confidence, over the past decade, the dominant public safety challenge in Indianapolis, as it has been in most large cities in the Midwest, has been the steady rise in gun violence, to include gun murders. While gun murders and gun violence rates have gone up, investigating and prosecuting suspects for those crimes and preventing those crimes has proven persistently difficult. Confronting the challenge of increased gun murders is a major challenge for all of us, for all stakeholders. The root causes of gun murders and much of the violent crime we have experienced throughout this city, or even in a specific given neighborhood, are complex and they are varied. For law enforcement, state or federal prosecutors, federal, state, or local law enforcement officers, internally, the challenge of preventing gun crime is challenging because of the lack of identifiable patterns to gun violence. Typically, the relationship between the victim and the suspect is unknown. Typically, the motives are unknown and in some cases spontaneous. Murders do not tend to occur during a particular month, during a particular day of the week, or during a particular time of day. All of those uncertainties for law enforcement make focused prevention daunting. One set of factors and the mayor discussed it, one set of factors does connect the majority of the murders in recent years. One, the use of a gun. Two, by someone with a previous felony arrest. Those are the two factors that have linked the majority of the gun crimes in recent years. Over 80% of the murders in Indianapolis in 2017, in 2018, and in 2019 were gun crimes. Over 70% of the suspects during those 3 years had a prior felony arrest. Non-felons do sometimes commit murders. And murderers sometimes use knives or blunt force. But in the vast majority of incidents in Indianapolis in recent years, the murder was carried out by a felon with a gun. This specific challenge is what Project Safe Neighborhoods and the Gun Crime Intelligence Center are specifically designed to respond to. This leverages the only identifiable pattern we have to prevent gun murders for law enforcement. It targets individuals who use a gun with criminal history in certain geographic areas or hotspots. The advantage of charging these individuals federally are the rules of federal criminal procedure. They are different, much different than the laws in the state of Indiana. These federal rules of criminal procedure apply all over our country, and they do apply in Indianapolis. The first tool that we have, tool of federal criminal procedure for a felon with a gun, is what is called pre-trial detention. If you can prove to a judge that an individual is a serious risk to commit another crime, is a serious risk of danger to the community, that individual will be held without bond. Held without bond until his or her trial. Not caught and released, caught and detained by the marshals in custody. The second tool we have under the rules of federal criminal procedure is that we do not charge murder. If you are charged with a gun crime, it is not reduced to a non-gun crime. If you are charged with a gun crime, you either go to trial on that gun crime or you plead guilty to that gun crime. And the third rule of federal criminal procedure that we have at our disposal are United States sentencing guidelines, which means for the individuals that commit these gun crimes, these felons with a gun, the recommendation is they go to prison. They don't go to community corrections, they don't go to a halfway house, they don't go to home detention. They go to prison. Those results and those consequences under the federal rules of criminal procedure are harsh. Necessarily harsh, in my opinion. As a result of the three rules of criminal procedure that I've outlined for you, 96% of the people that have been charged with federal gun crimes have been convicted. 90% of the people who have been charged with federal gun crimes have gone to federal prison. Those are the tools that we will use and we will expand. Throughout the last 3 years, with Chief Roach and now with Chief Taylor, the police department has had a mutually beneficial relationship with the Department of Justice, and I appreciate it. We have traveled all over the country to talk to other communities about their best practice. And what I know from those meetings is that enforcement alone, as I have outlined, will not work. If we just do the enforcement that I have talked about, I will guarantee you 100% it will not work long term. Prevention, addressing the root causes, is necessary. But I also will guarantee you this, because this is what I want. Prevention or addressing the root causes alone will not work. I will 100% guarantee you just doing that will not work. It takes a combined effort of both. It takes law enforcement, enforcing the federal laws, holding people accountable for the crimes, and it takes prevention in the community. So my message to the community is that the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department, all of us, need your support. The police officers that are in your community, day after day, night after night, working tirelessly to reduce violent crime and gun violence, need the community's support. Without it, this will not work. Thank you.
Not a whole lot more to say than what's been said here, but let me tell you this. As of the 14th of this month, of this year, CJIC has made 387 arrests, 297 crime guns have been seized. Most recently, you may remember Harley, the canine from Fishers that was shot and killed. Without CJIC's help, we would never have been able to tie that weapon to people who had committed a wave of violence in Marion County and in Hamilton County. Fact remains, folks, that gun violence is not going to stop on its own. It's not going to stop until we change the hearts and the minds of people who are willing to use guns for violence. We would much rather intervene prior to those acts being taken. If you're struggling in this area, you have those thoughts of violence, we would much rather you contact us, contact Shauna Majors and her people, and allow us to try to help. Because the numbers are too high. Too important of an issue. So if you decide that you're going to continue along in that vein, you're not going to change your path, you're going to continue to do what you're doing, the IMPD will be here to provide you a place to stay until you go to another place to stay in the state and federal system. It's that important. The community deserves this. People, families that are affected by violence deserve this. And we're dedicated to making sure that things go correctly for this city. Bring those numbers down and make it safe.
Questions?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, a lot of times when we have...
Chief Taylor, we've just seen the probable cause on the quad murder suspects. What can you tell us about arrests in that case?
So, that's correct. We have made 4 arrests on the quadruple homicide that occurred on the 5th of this month. We'll be more prepared to talk about that here shortly. But what a blessing to those families. Again, what a blessing to our community. The detectives and the officers that were out there that night did a fantastic job in working that. And we look forward to sharing what we can in the very near future. But yes, sir, has been right.
Did any of the issues we're talking about here this morning play a role in helping further that investigation?
No, this is important in of itself. At some point, Detective Miller, who's the lead on this case, is here, and he'll be able to answer questions more specifically about that case. But understand this, CJIC has worked in a lot of different ways for the city and the surrounding communities as well. And really, that's what we're here for today. I'll leave the other part for the detective as it relates to the project.
Could you clarify, you made 4 arrests, 4 different individuals?
That's correct.
Do you have names, ages?
There are names. I don't have those in front of me right now, so I'm not going to enter that.
Mr. Mayor, how does this new initiative help us mitigate our current homicide rate, which is unfortunately, as of right now, on a record path? Because obviously when you go after the trigger person or the person, you know, with a gun. Usually it's after, unfortunately, the murder has been committed. So how does this help us mitigate unfortunately, our record numbers that we have right now?
Yeah, it will go a long way toward reducing the number of incidents, both of non-fatal shootings or aggravated assaults, as well as criminal homicides, because CJIC is dedicated to focusing on those who we can reasonably predict either have criminal histories in the past, felony convictions perhaps in the past, but as well as victims, potential victims. Identify those who not only use a gun to resolve disputes, but frankly use a gun with some frequency. And as the U.S. Attorney indicated, if you are a convicted felon, you have absolutely no legal right to be in possession of a firearm. So I want to make it clear, today's announcement is not meant to suggest that the Crime Gun Intelligence Center will be able to completely eradicate gun violence. But I do believe that with greater emphasis, with a 25% increase in the city's support for the work of the Crime Gun Intelligence Center, with the cooperation of both the United States Attorney's Office on the federal level and obviously the Marion County Prosecutor's Office on the state level, the Crime Gun Intelligence Center will go a long way toward helping us reduce the number of criminal homicides and aggravated assaults in the city of Indianapolis.
Mr. Mayor, obviously the last 2 weeks, the quad murder has weighed heavily on the administration, IMPD, and your thoughts as you've come out and discussed it. Your reaction this morning to the news that we've got 4 people under arrest.
Well, I don't know the specifics, and the chief, in sharing that with you, I would simply respond by saying I want to applaud the quick action and the thoughtful investigation work that obviously performed by the men and women of IMPD that has led to today's announcement of 4 arrests. My sense is that, and I'll allow the chief or deputy chief to comment, that the community itself also play a pivotal role in any arrests being made. Frankly, that's the case with all of these gun crimes, and that is why we want to do everything we can to encourage community participation in helping us eradicate gun violence. So I would presume that today would not have been possible but without the work of dedicated police officers that have created community dialogue and obviously using best practices in policing. I'd simply end my response in that regard to say that sadly nothing can bring back the lives of the 4 young victims, lives that were cut much too short by senseless violence. But if arrests have been made, and apparently they have been, that will be a meaningful step in delivering justice to these families who've been impacted. Anything else?
Certainly, I mean, I can obviously confirm what's already been said. You know, we've made 4 arrests this morning in that in the quadruple murder that occurred on February 5th. And again, just like the mayor has said, obviously our hearts and prayers go out to the families of those victims who have had their lives shattered, their families shattered by the senseless violence. And we, you know, there are lots of families out there in the community who have been affected by that particular incident, and certainly we want to wrap our arms around that. But 4 arrests have been made, and we can probably answer some questions on those if you guys have further questions.
Chief, can you confirm that what's been talked about for weeks, that this is basically a dice game gone bad?
You know what, Abdul, that's a situation that information gets put out there, so many times it's misinformation. And that's exactly what this was. That was misinformation. There was a little bit of truth to that, but that was not what we believe was the true motivation in that crime.
This will be the last question.
What was it all about?
So I'll tell you what I'll do for specifics. I'd like to introduce the lead detective who I want to really hats off to Detective Miller and his partners. He has literally worked around the clock. I know that David has not had much sleep in the last couple weeks. He's been in that office morning till night, actually morning till morning. And so I'm going to defer to Detective Miller so he can speak on his own hard work and again the work that the community has played, and we thank the community for their part in this. And like the mayor said, we want the community's cooperation, and not just the most heinous crimes that our community might experience, but we need the community's assistance every day. And actually, as we're talking about CJIC here this morning, I mean, the community plays a huge role in what we do at CJIC, because so much of what we do at CJIC starts with those shell casings that might be laying there on the street, that, you know, shots fired in the middle of the night. So many times, I think, in instances, everybody assumes somebody else has already called the police, and so that call never gets made. But that's why it's so important that the community be involved, report that sort of thing, so that we can start. That's our first step, is gathering that evidence, those shell casings that we can process as a crime scene. We can get put into the system, we can start making those connections, and we can focus on those people who we know are responsible for violence in our community. So at that, I'll ask Detective Miller to come up, and we can continue to answer questions. Chief Taylor, please.
I just want to say a couple things before you hear from Detective Miller. I said earlier, the community deserves these arrests, and I mean that. But that is not to downplay anything with any of the other families that we've worked with that have been affected by murders. Not in this year, not in years past. All of them are important. In this case, our officers, who I think you know, if you don't know, I've seen them in action. They've worked extremely hard, from the street officer that's out there on that scene, helping to identify evidence and trying to assist where they can, to all the homicide detectives that had a hand in helping bring this case to an arrest, but also to all the people that I saw out there that were having prayer vigils, both at the scene and at different locations, all the words of encouragement that came from the community on wishing us luck and prayer and finding those who are responsible for this. All those people are just as important. We came together really as a community to come by these arrests, and I thank the community for that. But hopefully you understand, I've got some of the greatest officers in the world. They're working this. They work it in and out, day in and day out. And they've just done a fantastic job. And I've seen Detective Miller at work. They're right. He's been at the office hours and hours and hours, far more than he probably should have been. But he's a bulldog when it comes down to it. And so we really appreciate his work, but all the work and all the support from the mayor's office, of course, on this, as well as so many other groups. So thank you for that.
Detective, can you walk us through how you were able to piece this together? The minute you walked in there to the point now where an unsealed indictment lists the 4 people and the activities that night.
My job, first and foremost, is to protect the investigation, so I won't go into too many case-specific things. What I will say is that this is a combination of a couple things. One, good police work, obviously, from many units across our department. The digital forensic unit, I called them in the middle of the night. They helped me many times, Detective Barnett, Sergeant Melton. Also, our other units such as Sergeant John Haynes, who works in our covert robbery unit, who could find any car, no matter what little I have to work with, and all the other units that have come and played. Narcotics units have assisted me. The violent crimes unit helped with apprehension of these suspects. You know, my part is basically just to manage the case and then interview them and such like that. So without going into too many specifics, I'll simply say that we did have some video surveillance, not much to work with some, and the biggest part of this puzzle is really the community. It takes a lot for certain individuals to come forward and to talk without going into who they are. They know who they are. They stood up for what was right in their community, and they put their trust in their police department, and that's the way these homicides get solved. So I'm grateful for those individuals and that community, and that's really how we're going to stop the violence in our city overall. My unit is purely reactive, obviously as a homicide detective, which is why initiatives like the CJIC unit and stuff like that too are really important. Those are more proactive things. We're able to kind of get to these things before they actually happen. So again, I know that it's been unsealed, but my job isn't to necessarily put that information out there. That's for somebody else, because I'm a witness in this case still. So.
What was the motive of this crime? What was the relationship, if any, between the victims and the suspects? We believe the motive was robbery, and there was at least a loose relationship with at least one of the suspects and the individuals. And what amounts of money are we talking about here? Tens of thousands or hundreds of bucks?
That's really unknown, unfortunately, but there was at least money and some other things that were stolen from the apartment.
Did the suspects make any statements to arresting officers? If so, what was the context or content of those statements?
And that'll be our last question.
There were statements given. I won't go into specifically what those were. The probable cause affidavit should be available if you want to read about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.